Namaskaram everyone. Today I want to explain about Promise APIs. In Promise, like in JavaScript, Promise APIs are like really important topic, and this is a really going to be fun to, and you're going to enjoy this explanation. I mean this topic, the Promise APIs topic. So in this topic, um, Promise APIs. To learn these, I'm going to explain these at first theoretically, and then we'll get into the code. Okay, so let's get started. So here I want to the first Promise API that we are going to talk about is Promise.all. This Promise.all API, or any APIs that I'm going to cover in after, okay, after these, after all these APIs are going to take an iterable. So in JavaScript, the main iterable is array, right? So it takes a list of promises basically. So here we can give an array of promises p, let's say p1, p2, and then p3. Okay, three promises, right? And so for to solve this, like this is going to give a result, right? Like promise.all, right? So this is given, this promise.all makes us, lets us solve these promises, right? So for example, at first let's say that this promise and this promise and this promise, right? So this promise, like every promise should be getting settled, right? And so p1 takes 3 seconds to get settled, and then p2 takes 1 second to get settled, and then p3 takes 2 seconds to get settled. Okay, let's say. And for example, we if every promise is getting resolved, okay, in that scenario it will it will return, it will return, right, a list, right? Again, val1, val1, val2, val3. This is going to be the result. If in the, like, only after 3 seconds, after 3 seconds it is going to give a result that, a list of all these values, like it is going to reserve, and there will be a value, right, like in the promise. So after getting fulfilled, then it will give the values, value 1, value 2, value 3. I mean, like the promise 1, if it get resolved, val 1, val 2, val 3. But if one of these, like for example, after 1 second itself, okay, let me erase this, after 1 second itself, the first the first promise got, the first promise in the sense, after 1 second this will be getting resolved, right? No, it will be getting settled, but this time it got rejected. Let's say the first promise got um, rejected. In this situation, you know what this does? It won't even check for, I mean, wait for other promises to get settled. It won't wait, and it will, after 1 second, it will directly give an error, immediately, not even waiting for other promises to get settled. So and if the first promise, I mean after 1 second this got resolved, but the second promise got rejected, let's say, I mean, the after 2 seconds, this is the one which is going to be settled, right? So if this got rejected, in that case as well, it is going to give an error directly, immediately. It won't give the p2's result anymore. It will just give an error, because that is what promise.all follows. Promise.all follows the rule of promise.all, you can say, is like all or nothing. It follows that, all or none, or something like that. So if every promise gets resolved, fulfilled, then only it will give you a result. Otherwise it will just throw an error, because it works in that way. So promise.all gives result in only one scenario, that if each and every promise that in the list will get resolved, then only it will give a result. In all other scenarios, like even if one of the promises gets rejected, then it will throw an error. But we might have want like this, right? Like this type of functionality, that we are giving this many promises, and even if one of those promises gets failed, we want other promises result. Sometimes we want it, right? So in that case, for that case, we have another API. Okay, let's talk about that. That is Promise.all settled. Promise.all settled. Similar to Promise.all, it also takes P1, P2, P3. I mean, a list of promises, right? So, if it is like this, like I mean, um, yeah, if like every promise is getting like yeah, like let's say the same example, 3 second, 1 second, and 2 seconds. Okay, if like every promise is getting resolved, it is going to work like Promise.all only. Like it is going to give val1, val2, val3 the same result. But if after 1 second, after 1 second, after 1 second, if the first promise got rejected, right? If this promise got rejected, in the case of Promise.all, it has thrown an error immediately by not even looking at the other promises. I mean, waiting for the other promises to get settled. But in the case of Promise.all settled, it will still wait for the other promises to get settled, and then it will throw it. Okay. For example, if it got resolved, okay, if it got resolved, it will wait. It will wait for this to settle, and then if it get resolved, then it will give result like this, right? Like val 1, because the first one got resolved, and then the second one is an error, so it will error in the sense it got rejected, so it is going to be an error. And then val 3, right? So this is how it is going to be. But what if after 2 seconds this one got failed? Okay, this one got failed. In that case, it will just give the error of this and also the value of this, and it will say this is an error, this is an error, right? This is an error. I mean, this got rejected. In that way, Promise.all settled will give result in each and every scenario. Okay, the next API is Promise.race. Promise.race works in this way that it will return the promise which gets settled first. Not settled in the sense like settle, right? Like settle means it is getting settled, like resolved. It doesn't matter, resolved or rejected, it doesn't matter. So it will give the promise result which gets settled first. So in these three promises, the first promise which gets settled is, which takes less time to get settled, is this one, right? P2. So raise, like if P2 got resolved, then the result is going to be simple like this, like only one value, right? Val2, right? If the P2, right, that's why it is going to be val2. But if the result is rejected, if after 1 second if this promise got rejected, then it won't check for the other promises anymore. It will just directly throw an error. Okay, the fastest promises result is going to be thrown in the case of Promise.race. It is so simple. So next we have Promise.any. In this is going to return the result of the promise which gets resolved first, not settled but resolved first, right? So at first, okay, simply after 1 second, if P2 got resolved, okay, then if it got resolved, then it will directly give the result that val 2, right? Val 2, it is going to give that result. But if it got rejected, in this case it will check for the other promises. I mean, it will wait for the promises to get settled, other promises to get settled. And if this promise got, after 2 seconds, if this promise got resolved, then it will return val 3, right? It will return val 3. But if this also got rejected, it will wait for the P1 to get resolved or get settled, and then if this got resolved, and then it will return val 1. If it also got rejected, in this case, if all the promises which we have passed as a list, all the list of promises got rejected, in this scenario it will give you an aggregate error. Only in this API we are going to get this aggregate error. So this is that simple. 4 APIs. this follows so simple, like in the case of Promise.all, it will give you, the principle is simple, all or nothing. If all promises gets resolved, then only it will give you a result, otherwise an error. But in the case of Promise.all settled, even if some of the promises got rejected or all resolved, in every scenario it is going to give you a result. In the case of Promise.race, it will give you a result of the promise which gets settled first. So the fastest promise result it will give, no matter if it is resolved, rejected, success or failure, it is going to give you the result of the fastest promise. And here Promise.any, in the Promise.any, it will give you the result of the promise which gets resolved first. Okay, it will give you the result of, in we can have these type of scenarios, right? We want one promise. Okay, one promise, any, no matter what. I mean, like, if you are giving five promises, no, none of those like which is fast and which can be resolved, we want that type of, that in that scenario we can use Promise.any, right? And if all the promises got rejected, then it will give you an aggregate error. Okay, this is the theoretical part. Now let's go into the coding part and let's see how it works. So now let's get into the code. If you have understood the theoretical part, you almost understood this, like promise thing is over. But let's just see how it works in the code level, right? We need it, right? So Promise.all, for at first we're going to see it, right? And Promise.all, as I said before, what it takes an iterable, I mean a list of promises. Okay, so let's take the same example. Okay, so it takes a list of promises, p1, p2, p3, but we do not have these all, right? P1, p2, p3. So for the sake of understanding, I'm going to create these three promises, basic, I mean like the dummy promises. Okay, let me create. Okay, const p1, this is the way how we create a promise. We can create using new promise, and then this new promise constructor, this takes a lambda function which takes parameters resolve and reject. Okay, so now here I'm going to just do the resolve in a dummy way, right? I'm going to say the take the same example as we discussed in the theoretical explanation. So I'm going to do the fake delay. So for the p1, it takes 3 seconds, right? So I'm going to use set timeout for 3 seconds. Okay, it takes two parameters. One is this one, right? The callback. The callback, in the callback we are going to call resolve of, we are going to resolve it. So here I'm going to say p1 resolved, right? P1 got resolved. And then the time it takes is 3 seconds, right? 3000 milliseconds, right? So this is what happens, like our first promise we created, right? Like we have const p1. So similarly we want p2, p3. Okay, let me copy paste and make some changes. P2, right? P2, and then p3. So yeah, let me also change here p3, p2. Okay, so we are doing what here? We are resolving every promise, right? Let me save it. Oh yeah, but here, Promise.all, as I said, what it gives a promise, right? To work with promise, what we use dot then method, right? So dot then method we are using, and then dot then method we take this, right? Like a callback. Let me make rest. So dot then resolves this, right? um this is the result, we can just print it, right? Okay, let us see the result. Okay. hmm? Didn't get, okay, see, after 3 seconds, yeah, it took time, like after 3 seconds it, oh, okay, I didn't change the time. So see, like this takes 1 second, this promise, and this promise takes 2 seconds, and this promise takes 3 seconds, right? So let me save it. And after 3 seconds, one, two, three, yeah, here we go. So p1 got resolved, p2 got resolved, p3 got resolved. That's why it gave us an error, gave us the result. So let's just reject one of these promises, right? So let's take this 1 second promise and then let's reject it. Okay, reject p2 rejected, right? P2 rejected. Let me comment this. Okay, now I'm saving this and reload. After 1 second itself, directly, see, after 1 second itself, it is throwing p2 rejected. So it is saying uncaught, right? Uncaught. Okay, let's catch it right here. Catch of error console dot error 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 of error. Okay, okay, it is saying p2 rejected, right? It is not waiting for the other promises to get settled, right? Okay, let's say if this got resolved, p2 getting resolved, but p3 getting rejected, right? Reject of p1 rejected, right? This is what we want. Now let me comment this down. So I saved this, reloading. So 1 2 3, after 3 seconds it is saying p1 rejected, because it is these two promises got resolved. That is why it went for p1. I mean, it waited for p1 to get settled, and then when it rejected, it just thrown an error. So let's see all settled, right? All settled. In the case of all settled, what's happening? So P1, P2, P3, in P1, P2, P3, two getting resolved and one got rejected, right? In this scenario, it will wait for 3 seconds, one, and it gave the result. Rejected, fulfilled, fulfilled. See? So in every scenario, it will give you result, right? If all the promises getting rejected, let's say, let me copy paste this, right? P3, right? So saving, reloading after 3 seconds, right? So after 3 seconds, it is just saying rejected, rejected, rejected. In every scenario, it will give you the result, all settled. So now go to race. Okay, race. Race will give you, as I already told you, race will give you the result of the fastest promise. Here in all these promises, the fastest promise is like p2, right? Because it is getting settled in just 1 second. So I saved it. Now let me, in 1 second itself, it is saying p2 rejected. And if I resolve it, if I resolve it, it would say p2 resolved, right? It is getting resolved. So let me, for sake of understanding, let me change this to 2000. Okay, 2000, and then change this to 1000. Okay, so now the fastest promise is p3. So now the result is going to be p3, right? So no matter what, if it's a success or failure, race will be giving you the result of the fastest promise, which gets resolved, which gets settled first. But in the case of Promise.any, it will give you the result of the promise which gets resolved first. So by looking at this, which gets resolved first, these two are getting rejected, right? Rejected, right? So after 3 seconds, it is going to reject. After 1 second, this is getting rejected. So after 2 seconds, it is getting resolved, right? So let's see what happens. See, after 2 seconds, our P2 got resolved. That means the fastest one which gets resolved first, it will be the result in the case of Promise.any. So as we remember, like we talked, like if all the promises getting rejected in the case of Promise.any, what is going to happen? It will give an aggregate error. It will throw an aggregate error. Let's see that. After 3 seconds, see, all promises were rejected. It will give you an aggregate error when all promises got rejected, because Promise.any's work is to get one resolved promise, right? But if all the promises are getting rejected, in that scenario it will give you an aggregate error. So let's just recap simply. So I have just put here that Promise.all need all succeed, else error. So in only one scenario it will give you the result, and that is all getting succeed, but otherwise it is going to throw an error. In the case of all settled, need results of all, success or fail. So it doesn't matter, success or fail doesn't matter, it will just give you the results of everything. Okay, and then race, first settled, success or error doesn't matter, it will just give you the first settled promise result. And any, first success wins. So error only if all fail, right? And if even if one of the promises is getting, or two of the promises is getting rejected, if one of the promises is getting succeed, then it will give you the result of that promise. But if all fails, then only it will give you an error. That error is an aggregate error. So this is how I wanted to explain. I explained you theoretically first, and then in the code afterwise. So yeah, this is all you have to know about Promise APIs. Thank you so much for watching this video.